Hello, this is Nerd Commander, your global expert on fun, and in this vid let's address something that is not very fun, and that is the fun police. So Spire 2 got released, it got its first beta patch, and it enraged the Chinese community so much that they just threw out 18,000 of negative reviews. The majority of these are from them in pretty much 2 days. The patch was on the 20, so that's 2 days worth of negative reviews. And of course, right now, the West, well, this will not stick, the Steam will annul it, and the Western community is all up in arms against them. How dare they? They're just casual, etc., yada yada. But I will have a very hot take that will not make me any kind more popular, but I don't give a damn. And that is the Chinese are damn freaking right about this. And we should just stop tolerating this fun police attitude and that you are playing my game wrong, play it right, or GTFO. And first, let's start from the very common excuse that this is the early access game. The patches and changes are a given. Now, yes, that is true. But you see, when it comes to the balance, it's one thing when Dominate did not apply vulnerable, or now it does, or +1 mana more, +1 mana less. That stuff is doable. It's completely another when, prepare use 0 mana, draw 1, discard 1 or 2, and now suddenly, I am not prepared, of course, but and suddenly it's a totally different card. And it's not only that this is a rework, but let's use the global terminology here. So from Magic the Gathering it stems, and they tend to say that there are aggro players and control players and combo players. And what happens here, it's not that some kind of a balance is being made. So it's not like combo players are too strong, control players are too weak, so let's nerf once and buff another. And even so, just it's well, now it's a multiplayer game, but it's a PvE game. So, and it's not like there is a ladder or anything. You're meant to play with your friends. So seriously, it's a question of a gentlemanly discussion. If you think that your friend is playing it wrong, find a better friend. It's or deal with it somehow. It's mostly on the players anyways, and it's not like they're saying, well, if combo players grief anyone, well, it's not like the PvE right now has any kind of griefing protection. It's up to you to play it with decent people, and that's that. The developers wash their hands on that anywhom. So it's not like this, but it's more like, oh, there are combo players out there. Well, you're not welcome anymore. You're not welcome anymore. And keep in mind that so prepared, for example, how it's meant to work. There is a slide mechanic where discarded cards are played for free, and you have this hand trick which adds slide for a skill to the turn, but it's a so-so. The much better option is the Master Planner. So you play a skill, it gets slide until the end of the game. So you play this prepared, it gets slide, you play another prepared, you get slide, and you get some other skill, and then you exhaust and deal with your deck until somehow it is below 10 cards, and so you held 9 cards in your hand, and you do prepare something, and it cycles, loops, and kills the enemies. Another argument about this playstyle is that infinity is too easy to reach. And sorry, now I have played this for 219 hours. I'm not a safe person with a healthy lifestyle, and that's fine. I'm not Commando, deal with it. So in all this time, I have reached Ascension 10. As you can see in my vids, I can beat Ascension 10 on vids reliably enough. Sometimes it's pristinely clean, other times it can take 1 or 2 combat reloads, but I don't find this game to be that difficult, although it is significantly difficult more than the first game, and it could be quite easily overtuned for the majority of the gaming population out there. This is my conclusion as a professional game designer, by the way. The difficulty is seriously slightly above the top. And so in all the time, I didn't come even close to making this infinite loop. At most, I had this Hellraiser build on Ironclad, and it was far away from the Ascension 10. This was 3, 4, 5, maybe, where it did kind of kill and finish the last bit of the enemy on an endless loop. But on Silence specifically, the very big problem is that first, she's a thick girl. She starts with 2 extra cards in her hand. And second, when it comes to exhaust, her deck is the weakest of all, whereas other classes may have something that exhausts other cards, so in the process of playing out your deck, you can thin it here, there, and all the events that remove cards from your deck in the sequel, they've been nerfed. So they either are much more requiring, there seems to be less of them, there also seems to be less gold in the game, especially once the 25% penalty from the Ascension kicks in, and frequenting shop is much more difficult because of that. Not to mention that in the shop your priorities are much more different than just throwing out cards, and you don't want to be overspending on that. So weeding out cards naturally out of your deck is difficult. Relying on the good RNG starting wise, like you get the initial Relic that cuts out cards from your deck, and probably not even the shears, but ideally it would be the leafy poultice. And keep in mind that both of these have also been nerfed. It used to be 10 hit point and 13, now it's a dozen and 16, which is significantly more. So even these are difficult enough to get, because, and also the pool has been expanded. So it used to be like 20, right? And now it's 22. So you'll be seeing them less and less and less and less. But even here, it's 3 out of 20, so 15% chance to get a decent start from that. Well, okay, there's also the new leaf and the remove 1 card, but still not that big of a chance. Not that big of a chance to do that. And then you have this deck, which doesn't really self-exhaust, and the self-exhausting options are also very, very specific. Like, it's not like you can only pick Blade Dances and Piercing Wails and Backstabs and be successful enough. So that's just a very, 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 well, with a Knife Trap maybe, but Knife Trap by itself is so freaking bonkers that if you get a Knife Trap and some other kind of cards, you don't really need to go infinite. If you play the Knife Trap deck well enough, and if you build it well enough, the enemies would be dying from a huge machine gun long before reaching any kind of infinity mark. So that's just, in that case, it's just a win more. And then I suppose you're supposed to rely on purity if you want to make a thin silent deck. And with how all the elites, all the bosses are 25% to 50% tougher, and with how they just deal, in addition to this, much more damage, and how even common enemies constantly scale, so if you don't kill them fast enough, or if you don't build up your defenses fast enough, they deal colossal damage to ya. Staying as a thin deck and waiting to weed it out even further, I just don't really see all this infinity. Thin decks are so easy to build. Now, if you restart long enough, well enough, maybe so, but I thought that the mark of skill in this game would be a win rate, so you're supposed to be doing a huge win streak, and if you restart 5 to 10 times each time you want to build this thin deck, well, it's okay, then your win rate is trash and your opinion doesn't matter, and anyways, anywhom, but all of this still misses the point in that the fun police or the combo players are not welcome. And seriously, if you just have this sly, basically free energy mechanic, and if you add free energy here and now, the new prepare, it's not that bad, although it's much slower. So the old prepare was more of a combo card, this is a control card. And that's another issue with the overall meta, is that the developers are pushing you hard into control. On the early levels, control and aggro are kinda both viable options, although control has been given plenty of new toys, aggro hasn't been given jack. If only because just the new scaling, aggro, of course, it wasn't that easy to play anyways, but just that you see how to explain it. Say meat on the bone. It would be an aggro staple, just like, whereas the control, you play the power, you scale up, you do your defenses, and eventually you stabilize and just choke the enemy down. With the aggro, you just like swing the damage to the dome, and you try to kill them fast before they do major damage to ya. And you can say that maybe aggro playstyle is much more dumb and casual, and it doesn't require as many precarious action as the control do, and if it's dumb, then what's the point? But the point is that I haven't invented this shit. It's a tradition that persists in the card gaming community for a long time, and I guess you're supposed to serve all the players that equally, but it's just that meat on the bone, it was present in the first part, it's still present in the second part, but the incoming damage has risen so hugely that if before meat on the bone was actually decent for this, like, kill enemies fast enough and meat on the bone will compensate, and even then it was mostly an iron shard card. But right now, it's nowhere near close. It's just nowhere near close. If you try to do this, rush the enemies faster than they kill you. Well, it sort of may work slightly on Ascension 1 and some of that, but on High Ascension, it's just a freaking joke. The damage is just insane, and so aggro players are not really serviced well, and combo players are just unwelcome. And you could also say, well, this is early access, they didn't really understand, but K freaking mon. We are not like, say the Spire is one of the biggest indie games, and not right now by the online, say the Spire 2 I think is in the top 20, so just one of the biggest games ever. The author is literally a millionaire, so you'd expect he has some skill as a game design. And so you see, when we talk about other things that got nerfed, for example, it shouldn't really, for example, what changed here is that there has been this uncommon, that uncommon. Okay, again, spite. So you see, there was this spite. So deal 6 damage, and if you lost hit points this turn, which is not that difficult, draw 1 card. So it's 0 mana, deal damage, draw a card. And that's an obvious infinite plant. And you cannot really say, especially as one of the most successful and presumably the best game designers in the world, card game designers, that, oh, they've made an infinity with it. Wow, who would have guessed? Who would have guessed, really? Like, maybe it's not obvious to the average Joe, but especially since when we have, firstly the Spire as a reference, and that we know exactly how does it all work there. And it's just preposterous. So Spite with the obvious combo pattern was there, now not anymore. And once again, they're saying, well, it's an easy to build combo, you just need to have 0 cards in your deck, 9 cards in your hand, 2 Spites, and you deal damage, Spites draw another, you deal damage, Spites draw another. Now, you see it doesn't do this anymore, it's this deal 5 damage, you lost hit points, hit a bit more, so no combo potential, but please, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 36. There are 36 uncommons. Well, okay, that's with a multiplayer card, right? Without it, there are 35 uncommons in the game. In the first act, you will be seeing maybe 30 cards. If you visit one shop, you will be seeing maybe 30 cards, but obviously most of them will be common. So if we talk about uncommon, I don't know the statistics, but you will see 10 tops, and that's with me being generous. So 2 out of 7 playthroughs, because it's like 10 commons and 1 out of 35. So 2 out of 7 commons, you will be getting 1 spite by the end of Act 1. And there are also good chances you just will not see any spites for the entire playthrough. And that's if you fight as much as possible. You just fight as much as possible. If you try to minimize combat, then of course you will be seeing less of that stuff. And you need 2. And in addition to that, you also need something to deal damage to yourself, which is, well, and mind you, you need to get both spites quickly and that thing quickly, which is not easy at all. And then you need to cut down your deck, and then you also need to play out to do the various exhaust 1 card, draw 1 cards, you know, to chisel it down, and then you will have your infinite. Is this doable? Yes, this is doable. Is this doable every time? Absolutely not. Is it easy? I wouldn't call it exactly easy. Like, the logic is clear once you understand it, and you can try to force it if you like that, but saying that just like you're doing nothing and you get infinite is just big hypocrisy and gaslighting. Because I've played Iron Chat up to A10 and I was just never given the opportunity where I can just do nothing and then suddenly spite self-damage, clean out deck, and I'm fine. It's just, it doesn't really happen unless you try to force it hard. And even then, in terms of the win rate and streak, I'm not sure how good it is. It's like, yes, with combination of fast mana and whirlwind, we have people which go through the game in 5 minutes, the speedrunners, etc. But okay, fine, but seriously, what's wrong? And of course they nerfed that too, because you see, you have this expect a fight, which used to just give you mana. So just get mana for each attack in your hand at 2. And the upgrade costs just 1. And here is the same, but you cannot get additional mana this turn. So the combo is also significantly harder. And it's not like you could force it in any game, because once again, you need a thin deck, you need expect a fight, you need a whirlwind, you need also additional stuff, some power, because just by itself whirlwind and some mana will not really cut it. And once again, you see, it's just catfishing, because when you make a card like this, what do you expect to happen? It's a combo card even with this bottom line, it's still a combo card. It's a combo card, and what do you expect people to try and do with it? I just don't understand. It's pretty much obvious what would people try to do in this, but once they do this, you say, no, GTFO, no. It's preposterous. If you do not, and you see, okay, as a designer, as an owner of the product, you are free to do whatever the hell you wish to do. It's your product, it's your right. I'm not saying, I'm very much against this notion that like the customer is always right and that they can come here and demand anything and everything from you and you must oblige. It's absolute bullshit, and it's just kind of empty populism, because usually it's been promoted by the speaking heads of the global corps, which will never do what you ask them, and it's mostly a tool to just like bully the smaller businesses and promote your agenda and whatnot. So I'm not saying, like, if the author hates combo, I'm not saying his game should include this. But to explain my position, it's just that it should have been done before the cat was out of the bag. Because come on, it's a huge game with a huge following, it had sufficient play testing. If you would bother to look at the game's reviews in the very first seconds after its release, you'd see that there would already be reviews from the play testers who by that time would be having like 157. I remember that, 157 hours already. So it had enough play testing. Even the first layer was partially so successful and so good in terms of equality because the author was kinda head of Netrunner, I think, community, and lots of people have playtested this game, and this is why the initial gameplay was freaking good. So you can't really tell me that it was not obvious that this combo playstyle would happen. So it's once it is here, it's like imagine releasing an RPG and you have the classic trio, the fighter, the rogue, and the wizard, and 2 weeks come by and the author says, you know what, wizard freaking sucks, I don't enjoy you bearded mongrels, so how about you get out of my game? And the community should say, okay, not really. People have already bought this game. People have already spent some time mastering this game. People have already accustomed to this game. Some people already love this stuff. And by this point, you can't really say wizards are not welcome. It's discrimination. It's classism. We need to write to the Wizards Union. But that's the thing. The wizards have their union, so you mess with the wizards and they come to you and they, turn you. Well, it's more like the witches will turn you into a toad, and I'm not sure what the wizards union will do to you, but I'm pretty sure you'll conjure something. I'm pretty sure you don't mess with the wizards. Like, have you ever known a person who messed with the wizards? You don't, because I guess they don't just exist anymore, and we don't know about this, but they did, and it didn't do well with them. So yeah, but the gamers of course have no such union. Absolutely not. Because all the celebrities, all the we have no game journalism, and when they just hoard for whoever paid more cash, and all the streamers of course would be going, oh, precious devs, they're so amazing, you must support them, but they just leave a decent chunk of community out there in the cold. Why? And mind you, also, like, you don't like playing thin decks, but once again, we have this, say, Regent class, which, by the way, sucks a lot, and it's this, I guess. For example, here, you have it's a heavily combo class, and you have very specific Big On and Charge. Charge especially. Charge, it's a 1 mana card which does pretty much nothing. And it did pretty much nothing on the turn you play it, which is huge kind of a deal. The tempo on Higher Ascension is very high, and every wasted mana does not bode well for your health. Well, the health of your character, but it's a real deal. You underspend 1 mana, you're freaking dead. That's the name of this game. And so it was a difficult card to play anyways, because you need to do this for the sake of the future. But yes, the point was you could have used Begone and Charge to cleanse out your decks. Cards a bit, well, it's a rare skill, so, and it's 1 out of 25 rares, so it's good, but it was difficult enough to come by. Also, this class has kind of crappy card draw, and so doing a guards while there were enough bad cards in your hand also wasn't that easy, to be honest. I had a couple of times I wasn't impressed. And so you clean out the deck, and then you are meant to do the glow, gain some stars, draw some cards, and then you would be looping the alignment, spend some energy, gain some mana, and the cycle continues. And of course, what happens is that this has been nerfed as well. Because the glow, it used to, well, here it is. You see, the glow, it used to just draw 2 cards and gain some stars and gain more stars, but now it has this absolutely annoying restriction, where it's draw 1 card now, draw 1 card next turn, and it makes it so much worse. And mind you, here not only the combo guys suffer, everybody who plays this deck suffer, because this is a very annoying, very inconsistent kind of a deck, well, just class, and uh, just that you have the mana and you have the stars and you have the cards that cost stars, so you need to first transmute the mana into the stars and then stars into the cards. And this game, it's already quite random, and you'll see that often you die not really because of your mistakes and because of your skill, but simply because, you know, the enemy is defending, doing nothing, you're supposed to attack, oh sorry, you draw all your defense skills. Or the enemy is doing all-out attack, which you must block or die, sorry, you've drawn all your offensive skills. And the only way of mitigating that is just having these draw spells, just so you can conjure something. But because this class has absolutely bad card advantage, because really, like now it's one card this turn, this thing it's two cards next turn, so it doesn't really do any kind of emergency answer. This is also for the next this is also for the next turn, and so your only decent draw is the Photon card, but Photon card must be upgraded, and upgrades are not easy to come by in this game, given how much damage enemies do. And now Charge, it used to make this into the minion strikes which draw card, they don't really draw anymore. And I guess Glimmer is nice, but it's uncommon. Prophesize is a bit too expensive for what it does. It's a very specific combo tool, and in terms of commons, it's just that. So the upgraded Glow was a very important part of any archetype of Regent, which is, I think, the weakest archetype right now, the weakest character, simply because of this bullshit where you need to... No, you see, the problem with the Regent is that you start with this Falling Star and Venerate, and through one deck loop, you generate 2 stars, you consume 2 stars, and that's that. You have a bit of initial stars from your starting Relic, but it's mostly to negate the initial draw order, so Falling Star is not useless before you draw your Venerate. And as soon as you add to this combo even one card which costs 1 star, you already begin to bleed stars until you upgrade your Venerate, which is not a strong upgrade at all, and which is still an upgrade. And so when you have to weave your deck, so you need to add one card that costs stars, add one card that generates stars, one card that costs stars, and one card that generates stars. But the problem is you have 21 uncommon, and you have only 4 star generating cards in there. You only have, well, Venerate is basic, doesn't count, but you have Solar Strike, and mind you, it absolutely has to be upgraded. You have Gather Light, which unfortunately upgrade doesn't even increase stars. You have the Glow, which absolutely must be upgraded to support the stars. And you have the Hidden Cache. Hidden Cache adds a lot of stars, but even that is, it's like next turn. So in a deck that is very finicky about draw order, Hidden Cache also is making it worse, because now you need to draw Hidden Cache before you draw your major star costs. And mind you, whereas in commons the proportion of cards that cost stars and generate them is equal, in the uncommons there are only 3 star generators, or I think, or 4, but, well, okay, 4, but the thing is, Knockout Blows doesn't really count as the steady card generation, because in any singular versus big target combat it obviously is not. Likewise, Royal Gamble is more of a combo card, and not every star generation deck can afford it, at least not without Retain Upgrade, which gives you a bit better maneuvering space as to when you cast it. So here it's only like 3 actual star generator, but there are 7 cards which consume star, and with rare there are only 1.5. Like Big Ben Sword generates stars, but it's only 1 star, so it's not that huge. So you have 1.5 cards which generate stars, but you still have like 5 or so cards which consume stars, and the cost would be very heavy. So to support 7 stars in one deck loop, you need at least 3 other cards. It's not in 1-to-1 proportion. And so you need to be adding them to the deck in the correct order, but because the addition is random, and because, once again, there are 21 commons, and through the Act 1 you will see maybe 20 of them, because the other spots are taken by the uncommons and rares, and there are good enough chances with all the RNG that you will not see a particular common at all, and it's just how it happens. And then you just understand and realize that in terms of the course of playing, you get a nice star costing card. Okay, you get another one. Okay, and then for the next dozen encounters, you see no star generation at all. And that's if you lost, let alone with a star deficit. And so this is already a very random character because of that. That's not even to add that he also has this create archetype part in or add, like, gain 7 block, add 1 random colorless card, and sometimes the RNG is very good, but other times you just add a curse to your hand, and so he just has ton of this RNG going on, but the reality, he just gets minimal buffs. He gets, like, if we go deeper into the Regent, and mind you, the uncommon, the energy generation, it used to cost 2 stars only, now it does cost 3. Which is a huge freaking deal. Actually, where it is. Alignment, you see? Which is a huge deal. Because star generation is difficult enough. And also, outside of this specific combo, keep in mind, it's not only combo, this is not for everybody. So even if you don't try to assemble this particular combo, this card is worse for you. And it's just that the star generation is difficult enough, and so you say you can't really pick up alignment as the first card, because then it costs right now 3 energy, and so you need to pick up 2 more energy generation card, and then it kind of begins to do something. But if it doesn't do this, then you've just picked up a curse, and it's not really worth the risk. And because of this, Regent is very, very weak. But outside of this nerf and the glow. Outside of this nerf and the glow, he didn't really got much. So, like, so Begone right now is a bit cheaper, but it's kind of positive, negative change. Basically, so previously you still want to play it with a collision curse. I guess collision curse, they do try to force that, so collision curse used to do 9, now it does 11, and so you are meant to be doing this collision curse, generate a debris, and then with this Begone you transform debris into a minion strike. And so essentially for 1 mana you did 6 damage here, 11 here, 17 damage for 1 mana. And that's supposed to be your initial survival mechanism, which is great. But once again, that's 2 uncommons out of 21 in a precise order. Now, yes, you see, you are supposed to be doing, like, this class is mega upgrade heavy. And the proper course of play right now is either to rely on Astral Pulse, which is his main survival tool, or now on these collision courses and Begones. But if you're not getting either this pair or this, then it's not despair, it's just despair. Because everything else is just it's too fair. You will be taking a lot of damage in the early combats. You take a lot of damage in the early combats. You have to rest on the campsites. You don't upgrade your cards, but your cards absolutely depend on you upgrading them to be doing shit and to scale up, and eventually you wither down and die. So this Begone change, Begone, it used to be decent enough. It's just that, particularly with collision cost, it got better. But Begone still used to be decent enough. And just, it is a bit better, but overall it doesn't solve the issues of this class at all. But honestly, the entire star generation mechanism is so bad that I'm a professional game designer, so if I had the commission, I'd probably imagine what to do. And just that without the commission, I couldn't be bothered. I don't help my competition, right? Not for free. Oh, okay. The obvious choice is that in a class that is all about the stars, 4-star generation at common maybe is a bit low. Maybe Maybe you could pick up one of these decks that or cards which don't really do much and do some kind of, you know, improvement. Like maybe this refined blade shouldn't be, well, maybe not refined. Well, for example, you have 3 Forge commons, and Forge is a very specific archetype, and does this really need to be this? Not to mention that the Forge decks could also be using some stars, so if this was like instead of Forge 12, something like Forge 7, 8 and some stars, this already would be a bit easier. Besides, when you have multiple archetypes, having cards which serve as the connector between 1 and 2, it tends to be good. It tends to be good just so you are not railroaded and you can switch or you can leave your options open. Slay 2 is very weird in this department where you have archetypes which are very, very, very distinct from each other, and there isn't really that much cards that could serve both ways. There's also the problem with the prepared rework, is that prepared, it also used to be a card which you could take as any archetype and it would be good enough. And see, in a game where you need a nice combination of commons and uncommons, but you see only 20 to 30 in the Act 1, in choices like 1 out of 3, so if you get a selection of 3 and 2 or 3 are all useful, this is bad, because then, well, of course, statistic doesn't work that way, but it's very annoying, because you have these selections of 3, where all the cards are good for ya, and for the next 5-6 selections, none of the cards are good for ya. And you're like, arrgh! The pain! So, yeah. And so with the Regent, what's next? What's next, for example? Well, yes, you have like 1 point on Gather Light, 1 point on Vigor Generation, but I'm not sure if this even helps. Oh, well, it does help here and there, but it doesn't solve this key problem in which the deck assembly is just a nightmare. You have the more damage on the Heirloom Hammer, but I'm also not sure if more damage on the Heirloom Hammer doesn't really fix things, because it's a 2-mana card which still doesn't really do enough damage. Through the majority of the game, 20 or even 25 damage for 2 mana is not enough. And I guess the idea is that you create some amazing card and you can like copy it with the Heirloom Hammer, but all like the rare card itself is difficult to get by in the creation archetype, and that's not so good in other out of creation archetype, and then with creation it's difficult enough to hit the precise target for it. And so I've had a couple of times I didn't really do much with it. It's just difficult. It's just way much too random, and so mostly it's just bad. Just bad. So maybe it really needs to cost 1 mana for this, because at 2 mana and then you need to, you know, play the original colorless card, and then you need to play the copy colorless card. It's just way much, especially when your chances of getting any additional energy from ancient rewards are only 30%, and that's if it is a reasonable and good extra energy. So this means that 30% is kind of low. This means that in good half of the games, it doesn't really proc out both times, and you just play on basic 3 energy. And also now with one of the ways he was meant to be, generated extra energy, being nerfed. Now you could say, yeah, sure, he has the Orbit, but Orbit is great. Orbit is great. But once again, it's an uncommon. You need to have it. 35 uncommons. You are not obliged to any of them. And 25 rares, so having both this and that, not to mention that it's still 20 damage for 2 mana is bad. And when the enemies are aiming 50-60 damage at ya, you cannot really spend 2 energy on 20 damage. And a copy that costs something, it's not reasonable at all. So this doesn't really matter. And then, well, Kingly Kick is a bit better, Kingly Punch is a bit better, but I'm not sure if that in particular really needed that, because, well, Kingly Kick, they work great on the low Ascension, but they don't really scale that fast for the high Ascension, and it's as easy as that. It's as easy as that, and it's just that you see, they require you to draw a lot. I get that they're very obvious. I get that meant to play with the Cosmic Indifference, but you still need to draw past that, and with the glow being nerfed, just that they're not very great at the Ascension 10. Just slow. Just slow. Just slow. You could see that for that archetype, having I am invincible is essential. It doesn't really work that way, and that maybe I am invincible should be like uncommon, because otherwise it's just difficult to survive, and it just it's I'm not sure, maybe it's a good enough rare, but it just like feels that for that archetype to be worth it, this needs to be uncommon, so you can support it more. Because the archetype with the entire survival relies on 1 out of 25 rares, well, you will assemble it occasionally, but not really. So you see, oh, parry is better, but the blades are so energy starved that I also, like, blades, they work perfectly until Ascension 9, then they just fall apart because, and I'm not sure if 11 damage will fix it, because it's just a very slow deck and it doesn't really scale and it's difficult to assemble and it's incredibly mana starved, and the problems are just too big, especially since block wise this class cannot really scale his block that much. You don't have any dexterity, you don't have the best blocking cards. Well, Gather Lights is decent, but Forging Stars don't really have much connection. To connect Forging Stars, you need to be going into the this Smith, but that's well, of course you could say you can already you can always spend extra stars just on even better defenses to give you more time, because there's the particle wall and there is the yada yada etc. That's all easy to understand, but you need to assemble the very correct, like, you see, once again, if we use our stars want to be doing them only defensively, then stuff like Crescent Spear or Guiding Spear are out, and we don't really want to be using Solar Strike as our energy generation, and so out of acceptable it's maybe only Gather Light and Glow. Even Hidden Cache is pretty bad if you rely on your stars defensively, because if you draw it too late, you are stuck with all these particle walls which you cannot really cast. So it's possible, but it's not very. It's less reasonable, less realistic, because you have this very intricate order in which you need to draw your deck, and you really lack the card manipulation to do so. It's too easy to do fine in 80% of combats, but the other 20 you get these bad sequences and you're dead. It's a game that works that way. The class is just way much RNG based, and so yeah, Spatter does give a bit more block, Solar Strike does a bit more damage, but it doesn't, once again, it doesn't solve this function. But then of course Void Form is nerfed, because why not? And Spoils of Battle is a bit buffed, but still, Spoils of Battle, it's also, you see, it's like, yeah, sure, it does Forge, but you cannot really, it's very difficult to do this Forge and do nothing kind of a cards. It's very difficult to do them. So even though, like, Refined Blade, it's best of them, but it only works if you got yourself an energy relic, and without it, it falls apart. And in the first act, it's also maybe not so good against lots of enemies, and just difficult to assemble decks, which was not majorly forged here. And don't even start with say on the Necrobinder nerfed Banshee's Cry, because it's exactly the same reason. Yes, Banshee's Cry, but when it was good, it was very good. But now it's 9 mana. You need, and it's really reasonable, well, upgrade it's 7 but less damage. It used to be 38 damage, now it is 33 always. And let's say you start with a Banshee's Cry in your deck. So you get a rare reward or transform or anything, you get Banshee's Cry. It used to be a nice enough playthrough, but still not easy, because when you look at ethereal commons, you have only 4. You have only 4. 4 out of 21. And so you just need to strike at least 2, because if you have only 1, it means that on the first loop or cycle of your deck, you're not even releasing the Banshee below the level it's playable. So you need 2 loops, that's 20 cards played, and then it would go from 6 to 2. And now, of course, if you start with a Banshee's Cry, it's just like 3 mana more, so 1.5 more loops. Or you can upgrade it, but it's still like 2 loops even here, if you will be given ethereal. And as the experience shows, it's even with the commons. Getting any commons you want is absolutely not a promise. Heck, the entire community was bashing on the pressure points for not being reliable. And keep in mind that if you are given 3 or 4 pressure points, then Watcher would be one of the most broken characters in the game. 3 or 4 pressure points was amazing. Even 2 could work if you wanted to press it, even at high ascension. But the thing is, you get 1 pressure points, 21 common, same way, and there's just not that big of a chance that you will ever get this third copy. So if you discuss this from this pro 100% win rate approach, it's nice, but it just relies on a lot of RNG. So occasionally, the early Banshee's Cry or later Banshee's Cry would be good, but in many cases it would just ruin your playthrough. You get Banshee's Cry, you get 10 rewards with no ethereal cards, and you go home. You go home at the first boss, because now you have a brick in your hand. So it's just as simple as that. Not to mention, it will be picking any cards, and you will be picking Defile or Fear, which are not that much desirable for this class, given that it's a heavily controlled archetype, and it's not really simple to be playing aggressive here. So it's just, and that's all in the meanwhile, whereas we have this, and it's all in the meanwhile, whereas, good cards are getting, it's a bit different direction, but still, good cards are being nerfed, whereas she has amazing stuff she has amazing card stuff, like some of the worst uncommons in the game. Like, you have this Dirge, you have this Cleanse, and they are untouched. You have the new Doorkeeper, which, if you're playing a soulful deck, which you're meant, because also, the soul mechanic with the new Doorkeeper and with every changes that happen, the soul mechanic has been hugely penalized. This used to be 3 souls, now it's 2-3 souls, it used to be 3-4. That's a huge difference. Like, from here, you used to get in Soul Plus, now it's only, you see, they haven't changed the tip. They haven't changed the tip, so you see it's Soul, but on the upgrade they still give Soul Plus, but no Soul Plus. Only 2 cards. All this has been nerfed. Seance has been nerfed because, once again, now in the non-upgraded shape, it's 1 mana, don't really do nothing, go for the future. And you could say that, yes, shaping your deck for free is at 0 mana is cool, but thing is, well, it's a rare card. It's meant to be cool. You're not getting too many of this. If it would be uncommon, and if it would be a 0 mana unupgraded, I could understand your concern, but it's a freaking rare. It's meant to be that. And once again, the almost entire draw of this character is either soul-based, you only have the upgraded only Scourge, but that's for the Doom archetype, and you also have Pause, but that's ethereal, and it actually is inconvenient enough. Keeping your ethereal is difficult enough, and this comes at a significant cost. So her card options are very much limited and tied to the souls, but new Doorkeeper just punishes souls severely. He just does colossal damage and will steal your key cards versus him. Like, every 10 cards you play, the 10th is stolen from him, it's taken out of your deck, it's not even exhausted, it's just taken. He gets +2 strength, mind you, he has triple attack, so on those turns it will be +6, and the card is taken away from Ya. So I've just had today I did a quick for fun Regent on Ascension 1 run, and he just took my vulnerability. He just took my vulnerability. Like, first he takes my orbit, so I have significantly less energy, and second, he just took my basic vulnerability. And I've brought him to the 60 health points or so, but I'm pretty sure that the occasional vulnerability, and what would it do? It did prevent me from actually killing him. And since the draw comes from the top, and since there is no scry and you cannot really control what you're giving him, it's just a huge roulette where maybe he still something uses, maybe he still uses your key card. And it's even more, by the way, screwing with the combo, because combo tends to be drawing more, and it is punished most and most and most by him. So the souls are nerfed, and simultaneously this doorkeeper who punishes any excessive card drawing is not. And of course, the doorkeeper also punishes any infinite, because infinite, it relies on this infinite draw and replay, draw and replay. So versus him, you just do draw and replay 10 times, then he just eats the card you're looping, and you are done. It's even worse than the snail in the first part, because versus the snail, at least you could do a dozen loops one turn and then repeat it on another, and often this would be enough. You could have played that out, but here he just eats your threat and there isn't much you can do about it. So maybe and this is also just like, why make this complex decision? Like, okay, you've added Doorkeeper, it's already you play an infinite deck, it has 33% to implode, or 66% on Ascension 10. Why do this nerf and that a nerf and that a nerf? And the previous point before that, didn't you understand that this soul would and the various cards which also cleanse your deck, like Sensei or the Sculpting Strike, like the very point of these cards, in addition to everything, is just so the card is ethereal, you make useless cards ethereal, and it goes out of your deck, and you thin out to the point where you make the swoop. Was it impossible to predict that people would use that to make the deck thin and to do the loop? So why are you catfishing them? Why do you release it in the early access with plenty of combo options, and then you take all the combo options away? Because every class had something taken away, like and then say with the hidden game, you cannot really stack it on the same card. Not that big of a deal, but it is big of a deal. And then from the colorless cards, the one that matters would be the production right. It used to give energy without being exhausted. Now it is always being exhausted. So here, say colorless, you see the upgrade was very strong. You see here it's gain to exhaust, now gain to no exhaust. So green energy pretty much, colorless. But now that is not the case. And now it is simply always exhaust. It does give a bit more energy, but production. But that's wildly different. And then the boss relics, of course, where they are, they also got nerfed, so you are getting less value out of that. At least, so it's much more difficult. Ancients, like, so here, for example, you could reduce 3 cards by 1 mana cost, and the proper way to fix this thing's Tri-Boomerang is that it should be reduce 3 cards which cost 2 or more by 1 mana. But it instead, because yeah, you could say that the Tri-Boomerang was the only thing that maybe would have been a bit much, because just with the Necrobinder, Necroblast, you reduce to Necroblast to 0, Necroblast into Graveblast, into Graveblast, Graveblast, into Graveblast. That could have been a bit easy, but even then, the chances of getting any particular relic are low. You have 4 deities and out of or ancients, and out of which of these ancients it's only 30% to get that particular relic. So that's 7.5% that in the run you'll see this particular option. And I don't really see why clone decks can be so potent, but that's well, just wait. With Fun Police approach, just you wait. Like first, they came for the combo decks, and you've been silent, but then they will come for the clone decks, and there will be no one to defend you. Just you wait. So, yeah, and it's just a small chance, and if it happens, why not? You need to make 15 playthroughs on the average to get this Necrobinder double grade. Like people say, it's too easy of an infinite loop. I'm not sure if 15 playthroughs where you need to get 2 Grave Blasts, by the way, and upgrade them by that point, which is not a given, and then get a specific option. And that's, mind you, that's 1 out of every 15 games statistically. If you want to force it, it could be 7.5 is low enough. It could be 30 games, it could be 45 games. So yeah, good luck. Carry on. And likewise, Waku's Preserved Fog, basically it used to be -4 cards, now it's only -3. So the Ethereal now loops, but still 1 card less, because how dare ya? Trying to play a thin deck, and even then, Waku's Preserved Fog was not really good, but many of these options are good. There was also a very good notion that many of the you want the strong ancient options to be strong to compensate for the times where just absolutely screwed, especially with the Waku, or how is he called? Darv. Because, there is just so much, like he appears Act 3, and Velvet Choker at Act 3. You see, Sozo and Velvet Choker are, I think, the options which appear only at Act 3. And Velvet Choker at Act 3 could be absolutely useless, because it's a build-around card, and by that point it could be easily too late. And Runic Pyramid, with how the scaling goes in this game, it's like, whatever. And Pandora Box, Darv is especially bad at Act 3. At Act 2 he has the build around stuff, at least you can build around. But having Pandora's box offered by the Act 3, when you've already got dealt with all the strikes or in defense, or when you no longer have the time to see what do they transform into and maybe maneuver around that. It's just so bad. Or you have Black Star, which on the Ascension 10 is a meme, because for many decks you just don't want to be fighting it that much, it's just too lethal. So you get and then Astrolabe, you do not really care about that at Act 3, same logic as Pandora's Box, or Dusty Tome, which isn't really that amazing for everybody, or Colin Bell, which is a huge bit of RNG and that's maybe not that amazing, or Snecko's Eye. I haven't picked it up yet because you can't really pick Snecko's Eye by the end of Act 3, or start of Act 3. It's a build-around card. You either get it by the start of Act 2, and it's not even that. You see, Snecko is amazingly fun, but it is something that should have been forced in the Act 1. You really want to get by the end of the Act 1, you really need to build around the point that you will be getting Snecko and then get it. It's just that the chances are totally different. I don't recall what was the chance to get Snecko, but reasonable, right? You could have forced it without too much suffering, but here, Snecko chance is 7.5%. Carry on. Good luck. So it's just replay the first act 15 times to get there. That's sorry, but that's not reasonable. And then of course we have Waku with Choices Paradox. What does this even do? You have Lord's Parasol, which could just doom you. It means you enter the merchant, you're doomed. I did one couple of times with it, but that was mostly on a meme decks where it didn't. It works if you're trying to play with a Mind's Blast and you already cloned Mind Blast a couple of times, then it's a nice way to pad up your deck, but that is. It's like trying to get. That is a very niche archetype, and trying to combine that niche archetype with 7.5% chance to get Parasol specifically. Good luck. Good luck. And we have, we still have this talent, which for many deck, which for non-combat deck that don't need the wishes, because curses are forever, and wishes are one time per combat only. It's just so difficult. Or for many decks, just Whisper and Iron. There are decks which are able to survive Whisper and Iron, but there are also many decks which are not able to survive. And the closer you get to Ascension 10, the more difficult it to be like, the more finicky your stuff begins, the more difficult it is to play this Whisper and Earring. Especially, well, Defect may try to cheat a little with those innate +10 block, but that's Defect. So you want something to be kick-ass and amazing for the times where you have amazing choices: Paradox, Lord's Parasol, Whisper and Earring, or Siri Talon. Good! Good! But why fix the broken options? Why fix the broken options where you can nerf combo players? They're just not welcome. Have no fun playing games.